All right, can everyone hear us speaking now?
Yep.
Excellent. All right, so I apologize for the delay with the technical difficulties in getting ready. This is Caitlin Johnstone, the Chesapeake Bay Program, and you're about to hear from Rachel Felver. She'll do a quick introduction.
All right, good morning, everybody. I apologize for the delay in getting started. If you're having any issues with seeing the presentation, please just type in the chat box and we will work on getting that fixed. So, and I apologize if anybody did hear this again, but let's get started. So hi everybody, my name is Rachel Felver and I'm the Director of Communications with the Chesapeake Bay Program. I'm filling in today for the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay's Business Program Manager, Corinne Stevens, while she's on maternity leave. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Lunch and Learn webinar this afternoon. Our webinar is hosted by the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay's Businesses for the Bay Membership Association and the B4B's program's generous sponsors. Businesses for the Bay, or B4B, helps businesses create and succeed at environmental initiatives that help our local rivers, streams, and ecosystems while getting recognized for their voluntary initiatives by the trusted Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay. This webinar is designed for both the Businesses for the Bay member looking for some new project ideas, as well as the folks who are not part of Businesses for the Bay yet. Any businesses in the Chesapeake Bay watershed can get recognized for taking the actions described today through Businesses for the Bay. Before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone that your computers and telephones should already be on mute. If you have questions throughout the webinar, please type them into the chat box, into the chat field, and we will answer them at the conclusion of the presentation. You can open the presentation as a full screen using the little icon on the top right of the presentation slide. It looks like a square with arrows coming out of it. We anticipate the presentation will last approximately 40 minutes, and then we'll answer questions in our remaining time. After the webinar, you will receive a survey via email. Your feedback from today's webinar is extraordinarily appreciated, so please take the time to complete it. We are recording this webinar and we will post it on the Businesses for the Bay website later on this week. The Chesapeake Bay watershed supports an incredible 3,600 plus species of plants and animals, including fish, oysters, and crabs that fuel a booming seafood industry. The birds that bring bird watchers flocking to the area, the plants that sustain us, and the pollinators that keep our ecosystem in balance. Direct actions such as building nesting boxes are fun and helpful activities, but did you know that just choosing native over non-native plants can often make a difference? With that, I'd like to introduce you to Caitlin Johnstone, the Communications and Outreach Specialist for the Chesapeake Bay Program. Caitlin works to increase collaboration and involvement both internally and externally for the restoration and vitality of the watershed as a whole. In addition to her work with the Bay Program, Caitlin is a longtime data specialist for a botanist and consulting forest repair working to implement best management practices and catalog plants and pollinators throughout the United States. Let's take it away, Caitlin.
All right, great. Thank you, Rachel. So I'm Caitlin. I'm with the Chesapeake Bay Program and the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay. And we've been doing some get-togethers for a while with Businesses for the Bay because as businesses, you do a lot to get involved in your own communities, to forward your business, as well as protect the environment because it's where you live, where your employees live, and where your customers live and recreate. So since we had a bit of a technical issues at the start, we'll start with something fun. So for Abundant Life, you'll see on that main slide, they're not just pretty pictures. We've chosen these animals with some care. So we'll actually do a prize. If someone can name, let's say, 3 out of the 4 animals that you see here and why they might be important. So you could type in the box if you think you've got a shot at these. All right, how about 2 of the animals? Anybody? Will send you a nice Chesapeake Bay Program travel mug. Who wants to win a prize? All right, how about just 1 of the animals? Does anyone recognize if you're in Maryland? Maybe you can.
We have a couple people typing. Who's going to get it first? All right.
Oh, it looks like Mark is on the ball. So, Mark, can you tell us why might we have chosen one of these animals? We'll start with just one. So he's right. We've got a diamondback terrapin, a Delmarva fox squirrel, a great crested flycatcher, is that bird that looks a little funny there, and a native brook trout. So while Mark's working on his answer, I'm going to guess that you're probably going to go with terrapin, so I'll tell you a bit about the others. Got our Delmarva fox squirrel was actually one of the first animals to be put on the endangered species list in 1967. So that guy lives on the eastern shore and other areas in Maryland, and it actually gets up to almost twice the size of a regular gray squirrel. But because we've got conservation efforts going on, he was actually moved off of the endangered species list in 2015, and you can now see them pretty much all over the Delmarva area. And the Washington Post, brook trout. Washington Post has actually done a annual Squirrel Week photography contest, which can be a really fun way to involve people in your community as well as your employees and in a way to get involved with nature and get some press attention, as that's done through the Washington Post. As Mark rightly says, brook trout have declined when they were present pretty much all over the place, and you're right, they need cold water and really high water quality. If there's any development near them, they don't do very well. They are our only native trout. So the watershed are excellent fishing, and they do need that clean water. So having them in your streams tells you you're in a pretty good area. The diamondback terrapin is the Maryland state reptile, and they're unique among our North American turtles because they live exclusively in saltwater influence habitats, which has a lot to do with our Chesapeake Bay. And they also feed on periwinkle snails. The flycatcher, you may have seen him around, even though he likes to live in trees. That's one of the great things about this bird is that if you are putting up nest boxes, I know some of our businesses today have bird boxes that they put up with their employees as one of their actions, you might get some great crested flycatchers because they are cavity nesters, so they'll also nest in boxes. All right, so we were talking about the gray-crested flycatcher. Sorry for the delays and technical. We might speed things up a little bit. But we'll finish with our bird here. So the flycatcher is a cavity nester, which means it lives in cavities in trees, but it will also take to bird boxes. So if you're putting up bird boxes with your employees, you might see the great-crested flycatcher. They also like to decorate their nests. So they have an odd habit of adding snake skin to their nests and will sometimes choose onion skin. They like that crackly, thin, cellophane kind of feeling in their nests. But with human habitation, they've started to substitute clear plastic and add that to their nests as well, which if it's, bitten on by the babies, that's, not great. So providing a nice woodland habitat and making sure it's open to other creatures so you get those snake skins, or there's a compost pile perhaps that you work together as a community to create. You might see them taking some onion skins. All right, so we'll move on to our next slide in the presentation and tell you a bit about how Businesses for the Bay and the Chesapeake Bay program connect. So for those of you that are part of Businesses for the Bay, you know the value of it. You make your voices heard. There's a network of businesses all across different industries. And you're going to create staying power in your employees who value that sense of community and want to be part of taking care of where they live. So getting involved in helping the environment is a great way to do that, and Businesses for the Bay gives you that guideline. In the background here of this picture, I wanted to let you know that this is actually the Poplar Island, which is a waterfowl nesting habitat. And what you're seeing here is one of the actions that you can get involved in. So that brush pile through the Spartina grass there, which is different types of marsh grasses, you see that brush pile on the left-hand side in the center. That is actually Christmas trees. And as Christmas trees are used in the community and then they die, instead of just going to a landfill or getting added to the rest of the trash, they're taken to Poplar Island and they're used to provide a brush pile that black ducks like to use and habitate in. So that's an interesting way to get involved. All right, this is just a graphic of what it means to be part of Businesses for the Bay. We all live, work, and play in the watershed, whether you're a business owner, an employee, a customer, or just someone who comes to, say, recreate in the area and is going to stop by and check out local businesses. You all have a place and a stake in the beauty and health of our watershed. You see the B4B mission statement on the next slide here. B4B encourages businesses within the watershed to take voluntary and measurable actions to support the protection and restoration of the Chesapeake Bay and help the public understand the valuable role of the business community for our watershed. So you help the public and you as a business and your employees better understand that role that you have within the watershed. And that watershed is an intricate and fascinating system. So it's the largest in the United States. Starts all the way up in New York, goes all the way down to Virginia, over to West Virginia, and across the east through Delaware. It has the largest land-to-water ratio of any coastal body in the world. So that's why our actions on land have such a big impact on the Bay's health, whether it's through home, work, recreation, vacation. Our clients, customers, associates, pretty much every individual that a watershed business comes in contact with is going to have a significant stake in the health and beauty of the watershed. And one of the ways that we can be effective is by being a part of Businesses for the Bay. For those of you on the phone that are businesses, you can be a member. Any size business is eligible, and you commit to taking action to help the Chesapeake Bay, which is what we're going to go through today. If you are not a business, perhaps you're a nonprofit or, say, a government body and you want to participate, you can be a networking partner. So you participate in events and help raise awareness And then sponsors, perhaps you're not ready to take actions, you're just getting started on something, but you want to support the cause, you can monetarily support business membership associations. Those businesses are taking action, and let's talk through some of those voluntary and measurable actions. So they cover 5 themes. It's clean water, conserved lands, engaged communities, climate change resiliency, and abundant life. We're going to have webinars on all of these actions throughout the year. We had clean water, today is abundant life, and the other 3 will be throughout the year. So stay tuned for dates and join us for all of them. All right, Chesapeake Bay program. So it can seem confusing to have so many different organizations, associations, regulations, laws, voluntary actions. Seems like a lot going on, and it's hard to know how you fit into that structure. So it's not as overwhelming as it seems. The 5 themes that Business for the Bay actions fall under are actually the same 5 themes of the Watershed Agreement. And the Watershed Agreement is the basis for the Chesapeake Bay program and drives all the work that we do. So the things that you do through Business for the Bay actions are going to further the actions and efforts of the Chesapeake Bay program partnership. And that partnership engages dozens of agencies and organizations that restore the bay and its rivers. So it covers the entirety of the watershed and includes federal and state agencies, local governments, nonprofit organizations, and academic institutions. And we want to make sure that through that agreement that the watershed is both environmentally and economically sustainable. So businesses are natural partners for that agreement. All right, and that just gives you that in a nutshell. We're part of that agreement. So we'll start, and you do that through voluntary actions that you take as Business for the Bay members. Some of those actions fall under abundant life as a theme, but it can be hard to know exactly what that entails. So that's what we'll do today. We'll dive into some of those explicit actions that you can take and give you examples of businesses that are already taking those actions and how it's benefiting them and their employees and the community that they live in. So the Chesapeake watershed supports an incredible 3,600 plus species of plants and animals, including the fish, oysters, and crabs that fuel our booming seafood industry, the birds that bring all our bird watchers flocking to the area. I didn't realize I made that pun. Sorry. The plants that sustain us and the pollinators that keep our ecosystem in balance. The direct actions such as building nesting boxes are fun and helpful activities, but just choosing native over non-native plants can make a difference. And you might not even think about those different actions you can take right there in your own property. So let's walk through some of them. All right, so you can plant or monitor and maintain native plants and trees. So what you're looking at right here is a conservation landscape at an apartment complex in Annapolis, Maryland. So this is actually this spring, and what you're looking at, that beautiful tree there that makes a really nice addition to a landscape, is a serviceberry tree. It's also known as a shad bush, and that's a native plant. A local watershed organization, the Spa Creek Conservancy, helped construct the landscape on what was heavily compacted soil just this last fall. It also has edible berries. So if you get hungry on work and you're outside, you can also have a snack on your native, beautiful serviceberry tree. All right, you don't even have to plant if you're someone who's out, say you manage or own a piece of property that is naturalized, that hasn't been under construction, hasn't had its soil disturbed. You can just allow natives to come back by managing for the invasives that have taken over. You can get rid of the invasives that are there. A lot of times, native seeds are already there in the ground, and they just haven't been able to sprout up because the invasives are taking over. So try and manage that space if you have that kind of property. you already have that disturbed soil or it's compacted down, then natives are not only going to help improve your soil, bring back some of our native pollinators, help you see birds and butterflies come back to your area, but they aren't going to require as much maintenance because they're built for this environment. So they don't need, orchid level care. They're kind of built to be rugged and to take whatever the watershed can dish out. Most of our native pollinators are also specialists to particular native plants. So a lot of people want to know, well, what's a good native plant to use, or what's going to bring pollinators to my rain garden? Basically, if it's a native plant and it flowers, then it's going to bring pollinators. All of our native flowering plants have a pollinator that pollinates them. So like the trout lily is a native spring flower, and it actually has a specific trout lily bee that pollinates it. We have many, many more species of bees, bee flies, different types of bugs, sometimes even wasps are pollinators that live in our area, and a lot of people just don't know about them because we don't usually have the native plants that species needs. The honeybee is a non-native. It was actually brought over from Europe, and it pollinates our non-native food crops. So not all non-natives are bad or invasive, but they don't have the connections to our ecosystems that our natives do. All right, you'll see on the next slide, Lockheed Martin Manassas is one of our Business for the Bay members, and they're taking on that action. They were actually a founding B4B member, and they have a Rotary and Mission Systems focus. And what's special about Lockheed Martin, they have a 153-acre campus. So we're able to take on quite a few different actions. They have a 3,700 square foot native meadow that they put in. That's what you're looking at here. There's a native, the employees went out there together and planted all of these native plants and sprouted into a meadow. And they're able to see a bunch of different butterflies and birds that are coming out there, as well as some creatures that you probably don't see that are coming out at night, because our ecosystem needs those native plants. They also have bee blocks. That's kind of, if you don't know what a bee block is, it's kind of like a birdhouse for bees. You're providing spaces for them to live, especially let's say our carpenter bees or any of our tunneling bees that need wood. Bee blocks are good to have for them, so they're going after those bee blocks and not necessarily your front porch. And they do an annual tree seedling initiative as well. And then some of the other actions that you see here that are in gray are other ones that they're taking on. So they have an employee vegetable garden. They do a Go Green team that does workshops and seminars, puts on lunch and learns, and does tips about conservation at home for their different employees. And then energy and water consumption efforts. So they have LED parking lot lights, and they've reduced their water consumption at the office by 10% over their 2010 baseline. So as we go through these slides, you'll see actions in blue and actions in gray. Those blue ones fall under abundant life, and the others, you're going to see that they fall right into the kind of works that you're doing, but they fall underneath different themes. So perhaps clean water or engaged communities, and it shows you how tied together all of these things are. All right, another effort that you can take is to remove those non-native invasive species, help provide that better native habitat and get rid of the competition so natives can come back. What you're looking at here may seem like an odd picture to pick for removing invasive species. It looks like a beautiful dinner out, and it is. What you're seeing is a dinner that was prepared by Azure, which is a restaurant here in Annapolis, but it's blue catfish, which is one of our invasive species. It pretty much, just like our pollinators who are specialists for particular plants, a lot of our fish eat specific foods. Blue catfish eats everything, including some of our fish. So they're starting to take over everywhere, and this restaurant is serving blue catfish as a dish to promote a catch and cook effort to fight invasive species, and they did this at a press event that was attended by officials from the Chesapeake Bay program and the Maryland Department of Natural Resources in Marbury Park in Maryland in 2014. So doing this kind of event can be a really fun way to involve your employees, possibly your board at an event like this, putting on a fancy dinner, but you'll be helping the environment at the same time and raising that kind of awareness. Another thing you can do for removing invasive species, there's a group called Forested, LLC, that's in Maryland, and they've created a native food forest. So they've removed invasive species, now are creating edibles there. So getting food involved in the work that you're doing is something that everyone's on board with right away. You don't have to convince somebody to eat delicious food the way that you might have to convince them why invasives are not a good thing or why this native plant is better. So it's a good jumping off place. We can go to the next slide. We'll look at Exact, one of our places that's another one of our businesses that's helping out this issue. And you'll see that they do some work with native plants as well, particularly native trees. And we'll talk a minute about native trees. So everyone wants birds and pollinators and butterflies to come to them. They might not know that one of the best trees, plants, anything that you can plant to bring in birds and pollinators is an oak tree. Oak trees support 534 different native caterpillar species, more than any other native plant or tree. So if you want birds, if you want pollinators, oak trees are a great way to go. All right, Exact is working to protect our waters. It's actually their little catch slogan. They're a new company that began in January of 2013, and they're involved in a lot of different aspects of stormwater. They specialize in maintenance and installation of a lot of different stormwater BMPs, which are best management practices, and they do inspections and testing as well as consulting. They monitor and maintain their native trees. They remove invasive species, and then they plant these little gardens here. So you can see that native plants can be a great way to take care of stormwater issues, helping the infiltration of your land. And while we're on the topic of gardens, talk about fertilizer for a quick minute. It's an excellent source of nutrients, and it can really help your plants. But enough is as good as a feast. I mean, even too much fresh water can kill you, and we all need that. So fertilizer is a great thing, but too much of it can cause problems for the water with blooms and dead zones, but also for your plants. So that soil biology, if you give it all the nitrogen and phosphorus that it needs right at the beginning, you might not get your nitrogen fixers that come, or mycorrhizae, which are going to be, it's a little network of roots that kind of expand out the roots of the plant itself. They're not going to come if the plant doesn't call for them. It already has all the nitrogen and phosphorus that it needs. So once it gets to that point, then it's, it's old enough and it's just growing, and maybe it needs those networks and connections. It hasn't built them up, so it can very easily die. One of the best things to do is plant native plants and just use enough fertilizer to help them out, but not too much that you create a problem for those plants as well as the environment. And those of you that sell fertilizer or work on lawns, you're going to gain some really loyal customers when they see their plants react healthily to those best practices. So don't waste your money. Don't over-apply fertilizer, and don't apply it to dormant lawns or frozen ground when it's not going to have an effect. Apply it where it's needed, give it that little extra push, but not too much. You can also install or maintain and monitor wildlife habitat structures. So we talked a bit about bee blocks. A lot of you know about bird boxes. It's more than just songbirds. You can provide boxes for ducks, nesting platforms for some of our bigger predators, so say for some osprey, raptor perches, owl boxes, and bat boxes. And what you're looking at here, this is a female barred owl that's actually at the Cunningham Falls State Park is where she's being held. She was hit by a car, which when we have all of this nature right up against suburbia and cities, sometimes it can be difficult. So she was flying along, was hit by a car. She had to have an amputated wing, and now she lives at the state park's aviary. So people can cause a lot of problems, like with cars or disrupting habitats, but we also do a lot to help. So some of the ways you can do that is creating these nesting boxes. Bats, a lot of people are kind of afraid of bats, but you'll find that they're going, especially if you're a farmer, if you've got a lot of crops out there, bats are excellent at helping to cut down on all of those insects that are out there. All right, so if you put in a box, make sure that you maintain it. Boxes can often fall down, get damaged, get clogged. So remember that nature's always with us, and check on your boxes over time as wood rots or conditions changed. And you might just be rewarded with some babies and bird visitors. Really great way to get close to nature. And it makes an excellent bonding project for the office to get involved in creating the box, building it with your hands, as well as getting out on the trail and maintaining them. Bird cams are some of the hardest hitting social media for environmental organizations. Everybody loves to watch the osprey and the eagles and little baby bluebirds that are in all of these boxes. Businesses can tap into that love of animals with your own people, your own customers, providing something novel and ingraining your business into your community. Ariva in Richmond, one of our businesses for the Bay members, that's doing just that. They maintain and monitor 6 songbird nest boxes. They have a sunflower garden, and they put native plants on their walking trail. They've also put up signage along with those native plants on their property to help people learn what's on the trail out there and provide some of that environmental education. So they are certified as a VEEP, which is Virginia Environmental Excellence Program site, in 2010, and they celebrate Earth Day every year with a sunflower seed giveaway and a gardening kit raffle. You can also install or maintain and monitor wildlife habitat structures. So they may not necessarily be boxes themselves. It can be brush piles, like we talked about with those Christmas trees on Poplar Island, rock piles, turtle basking areas, underwater cover, woody debris. A lot of our young fish, young crustaceans, young everything like to have a place to hide, and the woody debris can really help with that. Or doing amphibian cover boards. I know we've got Mark Sutherland on our line here today with AKRF, which if you go to the next slide, we'll talk about AKRF. They have some of those amphibian cover boards, and that's what you're looking at in this picture here. They've installed 6 amphibian cover boards on their office site, and you can see he is finding a redback salamander under one of those cover boards. So it often doesn't take a lot to create that habitat and get people interested and be able to see that wildlife is actually all around us. Might just need that little extra help, and we can provide that. Some of those other ways to maintain those structures. So if you talk about turtle basking areas, Exxon actually built turtle islands when they put in the dam, because when that Conewago Dam came, when the water raises up behind it, it was covering up all of the areas turtles need to go and bask. So providing that space and creating those turtle basking areas brought back some of that habitat. You can manage for underwater grasses as well. So those are our submerged aquatic vegetation. You'll sometimes hear them called SAV. And they provide nursery grounds for young fish and crabs, particularly our recreational and commercial species. And they help clean the water, making it more diverse for fishing and cleaner for recreation and swimming. So we're trying to bring it back again, and actually this year, underwater grasses are at the highest level that they've been. So we're moving along with that conservation. It's a really good indicator of overall water quality and can even help with wave attenuation for properties, which means if you've got waves crashing on you, having those grasses out there is going to slow the waves down, not damage your property as much. If you would like to plant underwater grasses, it's actually a program called Grasses for the Masses, where you can plant them and then they get transplanted underwater once they're a little older. We'll move on to Trade Point, yes, Trade Point Atlantic. So this is, Trade Point Atlantic is bringing back an area that used to be the site of Bethlehem steel and went through centuries of steel making, and it really caused some problems for the environment. But it's important to note that you can start from anywhere. The important step is starting and then maintaining, even if you start small or if you start with more problems than, say, a site that went into a nice naturalized area. So that's what Trade Point is trying to do now. If you're on the water, do cleanup and shoreline recovery first, and then that'll make it possible for underwater grasses to eventually live there. So some of what they're doing, they're planning to do native winter covers. They've planted native trees there, and they're doing those studies to try and create a living shoreline around the property as they bring back that area that was damaged from centuries of steel. You can also remove stream blockages. What you're looking at here is shad being released out of a fish lift at the Conowingo Dam. So fish are migratory. Most of them here are. They need to move upstream to be able to spawn. But if there are dams and stream blockages there, they can't get there to reproduce. So can't reproduce, no more fish. One of the best things that you can do is take out those dams and streams. And a lot of the ones in the watershed are privately owned, and a lot of them are owned by businesses. So we currently do not have a Business for the Bay member that is doing stream blockages. So now is your chance to, take hold of that, be the first, claim that spot. If you need help with that, the Chesapeake Bay program works through work groups, and the Fisheries Work Group, which has NOAA, is one of our main organizations on the Fisheries Work Group. They will work with businesses to help remove those dams. So they offer assistance with the removals, both technical assistance and possible funding. So take a look at that. You'll see Dancing Grass Designs is the last organization we're going to talk about today. Those stream blockages are being removed in order to connect habitats for migratory fish, but that fracturing can happen on land as well. So Dancing Grass is working on that fracturing on land. They're working to connect fragmented forests with their tree plantings because they back right up to a forest conservation easement. So they're working on providing those native plants on their property to help with that year-long habitat and a native meadow for that winter cover. And they are also a founding Businesses for the Bay member. What you're looking at there in that picture is native salvia, which is that beautiful blue flower, and with a hummingbird feeding on it. So Dancing Grass is a landscape design firm, and they take all of that native knowledge, put it to use out in the community. All right, and we're getting to the end of our time, so we'll put this slide up here now. Shows you at all of our next webinars. We're going to have climate change will be our very next one on July 11th, and we'll talk through some of the ways that you can help make your business a little more resilient to climate change and help out your community as well. And then we'll have engaged communities and conserved lands later on throughout the year. If you have questions about any of this information, we'll take a few minutes to go through a couple questions. But you can also contact the Chesapeake Bay program. You can see our websites up there, our social media, as well as my personal email, or Businesses for the Bay. If you'd like to get involved, or perhaps this presentation gave you some ideas of new actions you want to take on, make sure you're getting in touch with Corinne and going to the Businesses for the Bay website or talking in that LinkedIn group.
Great. Thank you so much, Caitlin. We know we're getting to the end of our time, and we want to be mindful to keep this to an hour. We do have a couple of questions that were received prior to the webinar that we'd like to address. And if anybody else has any questions as we're talking, please do type them in the chat box, and we will answer them. So the first one that we received prior says, I'm looking for natives that are tolerant of occasional brackish water that comes over our bulkhead in stormy weather. I also want to make an attractive planting along 100 feet of waterfront of a variety of plants, none that are over 3 feet tall, not just a row of blue dunes or other grasses. Can you help with that?
Absolutely. So Businesses for the Bay, as well as the Communications Office of the Bay program, works with the Alliance, and the Alliance has been working on a joint website called the Native Plant Center, which is a fantastic resource. You'll definitely want to check it out. It's nativeplantcenter.net, and on that site you can find native plants that are going to have the same shape, color, size, and other characteristics of your favorite non-native plants, but that are going to do better here and help attract those native pollinators and create a better landscape. You can search by your soil type, so whether or not it's, loamy soil, dry soil, moist soil, sun exposure, whether you want grasses or trees or flowers, sometimes even by color. So check that out, and you can put in the specifics of your yard and find the best plants that are going to do well there.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. What should each of us business owners be doing to slow down climate change?
Oh, you should be coming to our next webinar on climate change, where we'll go through those actions. But I can tell you a little bit, some of those actions now. So you can plant native shade trees and plants near streams. They're going to help cool down that water. You can also cut down on energy use, start using some green roofs and gardens, especially if you're in populated areas. As that temperature rises, heat island effect, when you have that plethora of paved surfaces, and it actually increases the overall temperature. So it can be 15 degrees hotter in those completely paved areas than it is in the surrounding suburbia and rural areas that have plants. So help create that shade. And if you're near water, invest in some wetlands. One of the unexpected but more destructive elements of climate change is the increase in storm intensity. So wetlands help attenuate those storms, can save you a lot of money in property damage for communities and businesses.
So our third question is actually a question for all of you that was received. It came in from the Glen Echo Park Aquarium located in Glen Echo, Maryland. And they wanted to know if there's other businesses on this webinar today that would be interested in sponsoring a Chesapeake Bay Discovery Center that focuses on teaching toddlers, 12th graders, the importance of native plants, meaning that they host invasive removals as often as possible at Glen Echo Park, or pollution reductions. They also host stream cleanups regularly, and appreciation of the diversity of life in the Bay through our live exhibits and touch tank. We would love to partner with other local businesses in Northern Virginia, DC, or Maryland. So if anybody on the call is interested today about sponsoring that, I'm going to ask you to please contact Kim Lothar directly. Her email is kim.lothar@verizon.net, and I will also type that into the chat box if anyone is interested.
And if you're interested in doing some of those stream cleanups and getting involved with your business, with the surrounding community, and working with other centers, check out Project Clean Stream as well through Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay. That's going to give you all the materials and guidance you need to do that local cleanup. And I think that's all the time that we have for today. We had a few more questions about planting grasses or what to do if we're unfamiliar with non-natives. That's the last thing I'll touch on. A lot of local organizations like to get involved, so you can go to chesapeakebay.net, and there's a section where you can find a group that's local to you. So reach out and ask questions. You can also always contact the Chesapeake Bay program as well. Send some pictures, and we'll tell you what your plans are.
Thank you, everybody. We understand that we had some technical difficulties today that did impact the webinar. We really appreciate you hanging in there with us. As we said, we are going to be sending out a survey. Please take the time to fill it out so we can continue to improve on this webinar series for the next one. And we promise that we will try our best not to have the same technical difficulties next time. So thank you very much, Caitlin, and we will hopefully see you all in July for our next webinar.
Thank you. And if you have questions we weren't able to get to, send them through email, and we'll make sure we answer those.
We will also post the webinar on the Businesses for the Bay website. Thank you so much. Everyone have a great day.